Hello and welcome back to another episode of Coffee with the Chiropractor. It's your host, Patrick Hogg. We're going to go all the way over to the States again today. I'm going to see if I remember this right from yesterday. You're in Orlando, is that right?
That is correct.
Perfect, I've remembered. So actually we're going to go over to something slightly different today. Keith he started as a chiropractic patient and had a particularly profound experience, and he's going to share a little bit more about that with us in a minute. But from that experience, it's actually driven for him to share his chiropractic message. And now he's basically teaching around the globe, teaching chiropractors how to actually correctly communicate what chiropractic is, how chiropractic works, and how the physiology of chiropractic actually works. I've only spent a very, very short amount of time with this gentleman, but I can already tell you that this guy can actually talk about chiropractic better than most chiropractors in the profession. And it is Keith Wassung. And he's gonna tell us a little bit more about himself. He's gonna tell us a little bit more about his story. And then we're actually gonna go on and talk a little bit about how chiropractic actually works and what the philosophy and principle of chiropractic is.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, I guess it is. Thanks for having me on again. I'll kind of tell my story, and then we'll get into that. I will say something, slight correction on what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my work, 90%, is out in the public, just engaging the public. I do the seminars, I do teach chiropractors how to do these things. That's not my main gig at all. It just sort of happens. I turn down most lecturing opportunities because I'd rather be in front of a group of raw lay people than being on a stage at some events more. So I just wanted to make that clear. It just comes with the territory. I am soon to be 56 years old, married, 6 kids. We're a homeschool family, so this whole ordeal, the kids just continue to be taught. Go back, 34, 35 years now. I was a young sailor in the United States Navy in the submarine service, and I also was won the Navy and Armed Forces weightlifting championship. That became sort of my job. I would tour and train and compete, and got a little bit of fame behind it. You know, I was in magazines, I was on television, I was on radio shows and things of this nature. Got to where I was doing exhibitions and things like that. I was actually making more money doing that than getting my paycheck in the Navy. And I had all the time in the world to do it. So I was going to school full time, I was training, I was competing. And back then, a long time ago, somebody would have said, boy, that's a picture of health. Again, a long time ago. In great shape, looked the part, the whole bit. But I came back from a tour in California in the middle 80s, and I woke up one day with a really bad sinus headache. Actually, it wasn't that bad. It was just annoying. It was going to interfere with my workouts. So I go see the Navy corpsman, and they gave me 2 or 3 drugs for it. You know what? Cleared it right up. But I woke up the next day with really bad diarrhea, nuclear diarrhea. I go back to the dispensary, and they said, yeah, we kind of expected that. Here's something to clear up the diarrhea. They gave me 2 more drugs, and I'm up to 5. And I've cleared up the diarrhea, but now I'm having ringing in my ears. Go back, gave me another drug for that. And this just kept going back and forth. I got up to where I'm taking 18 drugs a day, about 70 pills in a 24-hour period. And the toxic effect, combined with 21 years of accumulated, uncorrected spinal stress, just sent me to a tailspin. I collapsed in my home. They rushed me to the hospital. I spent the next 8 or 9 days being poked and prodded. They injected something in the back of my neck. I lost 80% of the hearing in this ear and all of my hair, neither of which have come back. And got to where I went from a lean 215 pounds, don't know what that would be in stone, about 100 kilograms, I guess is the conversion, down to about 160. My skin was ashy gray, and I shuffled like a old man when I walked. Couldn't keep anything down. I lived on applesauce for about a year and a half. People would meet me on the street when I was still out and about, and they just assumed I either had cancer or AIDS. People knew me around town, and they saw me, and there was all kinds of rumors, he's on steroid withdrawal, which I've never done a single steroid. And I spent the next year and a half pretty much an invalid. The Navy would send someone in to look at me once or twice a week. They'd bring food. People from my church and neighbors would go shopping for me. Couldn't sleep, carried a red bucket around with me because when the vomiting would start, I couldn't make it to the bathroom. And I had access to some of the best medical doctors who were well-trained, very caring. I saw President Reagan's personal physician up in Maryland. They flew me up there to see him. And they just continued to poke and prod and give me more medication. There was one point where towards the end of this, for about a month, I took to sleeping in my bathroom, and I would make this nest of pillows and blankets because this medication would give me dry heaves for 6 to 8 hours at a stretch, and I couldn't make it. So I just kind of lay against the toilet with a pillow, and on a good night they were 10 minutes apart. On a bad night, they were 5 minutes apart for hours. If you ever had food poisoning when you're relatively fit, it's no picnic. When you're just devastated, and there was many nights that I thought I'd taken my own life. That's how bad it got. And finally, I met with my team. It would have been about May, June of that year. And these were good people who I watched them with tears in their eyes, and they were talking to me. Keith, it's over. You got 3 months, 4 months. You'll not make it to the end of the year. We suggest you get your affairs in order. No injuries, but my immune system was just almost a total failure. And I was relieved. I didn't want to live like that. I'd gone from being able to lift these incredible weights to not being able to go out and get my own mail. And so I had a friend drive me to a mall to buy Christmas gifts for my family. I wasn't married, no kids, but to buy Christmas gifts for my family, knowing I wasn't going to be alive in 6 months. And I spent literally the entire day getting 5 or 6 gifts, and was picking up the last gift and paying for it. And a man comes up behind me and he sees me struggling, and he asked me what's wrong, and I sort of ignored him because I was exhausted. I mean, just walking was wiped out. And he followed me out to the food court where I had a friend come to pick me up because I couldn't drive. I wasn't strong enough to actually with the wheel. And I had time, and he bugs me, so I start telling him the story. He says, "You know what? Have you been to a chiropractor?" And I probably laughed for the first time in a year. I said, you didn't listen to me. There's nothing wrong with my back. I haven't hurt myself. I have internal issues. And he says, there's more to chiropractic than what you think there is. And I said, look, I know I don't look it, but I'm something of a health expert. I've been in muscle and fitness. I've written articles about this, which I have. If there was more to chiropractic, I would know about it. Pretty arrogant statement. And he just to come to his office, and he would take care of me. And my friend showed up, and I lied to him. I said, "Yeah, I'll come to your office tomorrow just to get rid of him because he wouldn't have showed up." And so we were driving home, and my friend says, "You want me to give you a ride tomorrow?" I said, "To where?" And he said, "To that chiropractor." I go, "I'm not going to go to him. Guy's a quack. Chiropractors are quack." That was my mindset. He goes, "Well, why wouldn't you go? What else are you doing tomorrow besides sitting in your seat with your vomit bucket?" And I said, "Do you know much about chiropractic?" He goes, "I've never heard anything good." But he goes, "God, Keith, if it was me," he goes, I'd go see a guy that practiced voodoo if there was a 1 in a million chance." He goes, "What else you doing?" I went, "Okay, that's the logic." Next day, he drives me to the office, and this guy just talks and talks and talks. He's a nice guy. He just yak. And he adjusted me, and then he rested me, and then he hugged me, which I thought was really weird at the time. And he said, "I'll see you tomorrow." And I felt absolutely no different. None. In fact, I was worse because I was just sitting exhausted me, and I'd been there for a while. So I go home and eat my applesauce and go to bed. And I woke up the next day, not in pain, just stiff and sore, especially upper here, almost like you do a workout for the first time. You're not in pain, but you can really feel it. And I remember thinking, that's what now my dad hated chiropractors until the day he died, which means you can't get through to some people. And so I inherited that. Ignorantly. And I remember thinking, that's what chiropractors do. They hurt you one day, then the next day he's going to fix me. Dad was right. They're quacks. And I was mad now because the last thing I needed was more discomfort in my life. And I went into the shower and got ready and showered and brushed my teeth, put my clothes on. And I walked into the kitchen to eat my applesauce because I lived on those little Mott's applesauce. I ate 2 or 3 of them a day. That's what I lived on. And I'll never forget, it's been a long time, walking in that kitchen, all of a sudden, stopped dead in my tracks, and 3 things just hit me. I had just slept 8 straight hours for the first time in 13, 14 months. I'd sleep 2 hours at a stretch, if that, and it wasn't good sleep. I mean, I felt rested for the first time in over a year. I had just taken a shower, brushed my teeth, put on some clothes. That normally necessitated a hour nap in my easy chair just to go through the rigors. That's how weak it was of opening up a can of applesauce and putting it in a dish. And I was legitimately hungry for the first time in a long time. And I had tried to eat other foods. For some reason, applesauce is easy in the stomach. Soft-boiled 2 eggs, figuring, I know I'm going to throw them up, Might as well make it easy on myself. Soft boiled 2 eggs, put them in a bowl, ate them real quick, grabbed the bucket, went and sat in my chair, waiting to throw up. I didn't throw up. I remember thinking, good night's sleep, which is incredible. I'm not as exhausted as I've been. And I just kept some food down. Chiropractic, let's give it another shot. So I go back and I see him again. He adjusts me again. And I just kept going. And it wasn't like the heavens parted, the hand of God came down, and all of a sudden I'm just, but every day got better. The ADLs, the activities of daily living, just got better one step at a time. All of a sudden, I'm eating cottage cheese. All of a sudden, I'm taking naps. All of a sudden, I could actually sit and watch a program on TV where normally I was my head, because the medication was just in a cloud. I could actually read and focus. I could go and get my mail and come back. Pretty soon, I'm walking around the block. Pretty soon, I'm walking around the block twice. Pretty soon, I'm getting in over the next couple weeks, I'm getting in my truck and driving around. And within about 3 to 4 weeks, I put about 20, 30 pounds back on. Skin color's changing. Put my uniform on and showed up at the command office reporting for duty. They thought they were coming to my funeral. And within 6 weeks, I'm training, lifting weights again, tiny little pink weights. Within a year, I'm competing again, breaking all of my records from 2 years earlier. And I asked this doctor, what'd you do to me? What did you do to me? And he gave me the standard response, and it just didn't land. And I'm bringing people to him left and right. I referred my commanding officer's wife and just people I knew with in church. And I'd go to church on prayer meeting nights. And I just read everybody's name down that was, had health concerns, because that's what all prayer meetings are. And I go, you're going with me? I'll pick you up on Thursday. And they all improved to one degree or another, but I couldn't tell them why. We didn't have the internet back then. I went into the archives of a library, little microfiche, nothing, just chiropractic was good for limited therapy for neck, maybe. And we had a great medical university where I lived in Charleston, South Carolina. So I started going down there at night, and I'd spend 6 to 7, 8 hours every day, because I was still on light duty. So I had extra time just studying, going through we had computers then looking for anything chiropractic related. And eventually I started bringing these home, and and eventually it still wasn't making sense to me. This gentleman had some green books on his shelf, and he had them basically there for decor. He never really read them, but I asked to borrow them, and I took home Up from Below the Bottom, B.J. Palmer, which is probably not the best intro green book for a layperson. And I read it.
I don't think any of them are particularly good. They're all a little bit difficult to read.
That one's deep. And I'm reading, and at first I'm just reading the science. Like BJ writes about the science, and then all of a sudden he tells like the story of the giant clam or some goof. And I remember thinking, what is with this guy? And I would skip those over because they bored me. I don't want to hear about, how you got the cobra or the python over in India, or how you cooked an elephant. I don't care about that. But then eventually I started reading those stories. And you know what? He had a purpose for those stories. And they were to show the consistency of the universe, the consistency of life. And I got to where I had green books on one side of my kitchen table and Arthur Guyton on the other side. And I'm going back and forth. And in the philosophy, I saw why. The consistency of life, why laws are the same for everyone. This person doesn't get to have this set of universal laws, and this person says, well, I'm different. I have my own set of universal. It doesn't matter. Parachute works the same on everyone. You may need a different kind of parachute. In the physiology, I saw how that manifested. And when you put those together, the how and the why, you've got an unbeatable message that people are drawn to. And I started going out and telling people, and now I can tell them why. And at first I didn't do a very good job, but as BJ said, you don't write lectures, you build them. And I'd already been on the lecture circuit doing strength training, things like that. So I would go and lecture to this group and talk 10 minutes on squat technique and then 30 minutes on chiropractic. And I did what I heard other people saying, which wasn't very effective. Or one person in the room would say, well, I'd like to go see a chiropractor. And I got to get better at this. So I just had to retool my approach, my lecture. And it took time. It wasn't all at once. And I've spent the last 33 going on 34 years real soon just lecturing and teaching all over the world. I've been in every state. I've been in 35, 40 countries. I have a day job. but this has become my passion. And you know what? If I talk to a person and I share this with them and they don't respond to it, or they don't respond the way I want them to, okay, I'm no longer responsible for you. And at one time, probably for the first 20 years, I averaged about 300 lectures, public lectures a year. I'm way down on that. I'm probably a third of that, and a lot of it's online and things like that. But I hope when I draw my last breath, it's as soon as I have finished a lay lecture somewhere at a church, at a school, at a public event, and it's all I've done. It's all I've ever really wanted to do, and that's my story.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah. And I've had the chance now to see other stories from people that have either read my stuff, heard me talk. Now I'm seeing their grandkids. If it was just my story, I think the amazement would have diminished. But I've seen thousands, maybe heard of 10,000s of similar stories. Maybe less dramatic, maybe not as condensed. Mm-hmm. The stories are the same.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Like, chiropractors see these kinds of things in their offices all the time. All the time. I've had numerous patients that have come in that have had one problem, and it's not the problem that they even came in with, which was the thing that responded. So I know patients that have come in that have had allergies with cats, and they're no longer allergic to cats. However, they still got a little bit of stiffness in their lower back. But the reason why they keep coming back is because they've seen a profound change in the way that their physiology works within their body.
And I'll tell you the biggest miracle I've seen in offices. Mm. It's people, doctors who have families under regular care a couple times a month for their whole lifetime as the kids grow up. And those families literally are unaffected by the normality of childhood disease and illnesses and things like that. And I told my old boss years ago, guy worked for a chiropractor, I said, you got like 300 families come see you on a regular basis. And you can look at the health history of it, and there's nothing there. And I said, it's almost like, and I'm going to be a little crude here, it's almost like going to a third world country, Ethiopia, someplace where there's just famine, and seeing a bunch of fat kids. You go, how'd that happen? That's not supposed to happen. The typical family, the typical kid is just inflicted with stuff. When I was a little kid, in 5th grade, one kid had allergies, one kid. Now one kid doesn't have allergies. It's just the norm to have all this crud and crap, so to speak. So the miracle that regular care prevents that, even though that's not the intended purpose. That's the miracle.
Mm-hmm. And it's I could listen to you talk all day, and and this is so true. This is so true. And a lot of us actually forget is that the power that orchestrates the body is actually also the same thing that heals the body. Yes. Maybe I feel like we should delve a little bit deeper into your explanation of how chiropractic works, and some of the things that you've discovered on how you could potentially. And I actually really liked one of your explanations, which was we were talking about a minute ago, was Billy Joel playing the piano. And how you've kind of linked that to the expression of how people express health. And maybe you could just describe that a little bit better.
Sure. Let me start with this, though.
Perfect.
Before I explain, communicate, talk to anyone about chiropractic, before I give them a piece of information, I've got to engage them. I've got to get them interested, at least generically speaking. Until they're engaged, my explanation is going to go right over their head. And that could be done out of curiosity. That could be done out of whatever. I've got to engage them. I want to engage them, then inform them. If all it took was information, I could stand on a street corner with the bell and the sign, subluxation, and not get laughed at. Okay, so engage, then inform. You got to pick that, and we can talk about how to engage people another time. But really, now as I'm talking to you. Talking to a person or a group of people, I'm not the one doing the talking. I'm asking the leading questions, letting them fill in the pieces, and I'm putting it all together. I make them think they're telling a story. As I shared with you yesterday, the chiropractic essentially is a big box of jigsaw puzzle pieces. You can pick up any single piece, and they know what that is. They know brain, spine. There's nothing. Ask any parent fever. What's going on when they have a fever? And no one says, oh, that's a nasty, bad thing that causes brain. They really don't. They might have years back. So I'm putting these pieces together, helping them, assembling them by asking them questions. what about this? And if I ask them a question and they get it wrong or they get it partially correct, you know what I do? I auto-correct it. I restate the truth. And I go, yes. And then I restate it, which means you think you said it. And now we're putting the pieces together. And at the end, I'm going to make you tell the story. And it's people would rather talk than listen. And so I'm only doing 5 or 10% of the talking. I'm not laying the BJ Palmer smackdown on them. So that's number one. Or we're going to talk heavily about function. I'll come back to Billy Joel. If you were to go to a Billy Joel concert, have you ever seen him in person by chance?
No, not at all.
World-class pianist. The voice has diminished. In fact, we saw Sir Elton John on his tour January.
Right.
And the guy's in his 70s. And he was the first concert I saw when I was 16. Now I'm seeing him on his farewell tour. And you know what? They show the close-up of his hands on the piano, and he can still he can't sing as well. His voice is not what it was, but man, it's just incredible. So Billy Joel, you go to his concert. I give you tickets, front row, center stage, and he comes out on stage and he plays his signature piece, which is the Piano Man, and he plays it perfectly. He plays it flawlessly because he's played it 10,000 times. It's probably why his first model wife left him. She just couldn't take any more Piano Man. And perfectly flawlessly because he's a world-class talent. But what if the backstage musicians failed to tune that baby grand piano? What if there was some gum between, I don't know, B and C, whatever those keys are, and they're kind of stuck, and the center pedal's kind of rusty, it doesn't move very well. He sits down and plays his signature piece, which is Piano Man. What's the music going to sound like? Well, it's not going to sound very good. Well, wait a minute. If he's so talented, why can't he overcome those things? Why can't he just improve on it? Because he's already playing it perfectly. And in the same way that a talented musician or artist of any type is limited by the structural configuration of their instrument, innate intelligence can only express itself in relationship to the structural function of the human being. So the piano player, the talent, that's innate. Essentially perfect. The piano, the instrument, is our human body, our human frame, as long as we're alive. Music is health. It's the expression. Structure function is variable. It fluctuates up and down. Okay. Talent, innate, is 100%. It never varies back and forth. A person, there's probably someone within 2 miles of me that's probably going to die before the day's out, tragically. Okay. Innate intelligence is 100%, but their body's only structurally functioning at 30, 40%. And that's why when you die, it literally is the innate intelligence leaving the body. It's left the building. So the purpose of healthcare, all healthcare, should be the model, the objective, to improve, restore, and maintain function, which allows for that expression. We can't make the body any wiser. We can't alter it. But we can work in improving function, and function is a structural thing, which means it requires ongoing maintenance and care. And function is a completely different strategy than making you feel better, because you can feel better faster by reducing function, but you have to keep doing it, which eventually wears out that body. So the goal, the objective is always structural function. Every decision you make, and this transcends chiropractic. This isn't a chiropractic thing. Should be, is this improving, restoring, maintaining the structural integrity of my body? And that's my explanation.
And that's actually, such a beautiful explanation. But as you were basically just saying, that you can reduce function, and reduce pain at the same time, which is essentially what the medicine was doing with yourself.
Right. Correct.
And you were just basically going through that experience of, and the problem is that with every drug there was another reaction somewhere else, which required something else, which I forget the name of the disorder, which is essentially triggered by overuse of drugs. I forget the name of it. Yeah, there is that.
Drugs are like the analogy I give. I'm not a drug basher by any stretch, because I don't think it's healthy. I think you can explain physiology and people come to their own conclusions. And when you start going off and bashing, when you put out a negative message, you attach yourself to that negative. I'm going to give you an analogy, and this is important for docs to know. You're going out on a date, spouse, wife, girlfriend, friend, and the babysitter comes over. And you've never met her before, but she came well recommended, and she's on time, she's nice looking, the whole bit. And as you're putting your coats on, she says, "Did you hear about the babysitter across town the other night? She drowned all 3 kids in the pool and buried them in the backyard." And this is just something that was in the news. All of a sudden, you're taking your coat back off, going, "Yeah, I don't think I'm going anywhere tonight." It had nothing to do with her. She didn't do it. She has nothing to do with the fact that she brought it up. All of a sudden, babysitter, you're less comfortable with her. And so when you start talking about deaths and overuse and drugs and all this kind of stuff, when you make it negative, you attach yourself to that negative, whether you want to or not. Okay. But the way I give drugs is like cash advancing your credit card to get out of debt, to improve your financial situation. Short term, it always seems like a good idea because you got more cash. You can cover that cell phone bill, and there's a time you have to do that. There's an emergency. We've been in that situation as a society, but you can't do it indefinitely because now you owe interest in 30 days, and you can only borrow so much. And so when you use the medication in those situations, you're just digging yourself a bigger hole. It's inevitable. It's biological inevitability. Everyone goes through it. They just go through it at different experiences. So.
You're sticking more chewing gum on the piano keys.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love the analogy. Look, I really appreciate some of the work that you do, and obviously I've picked up some of the information. So you do a lot of work in the research as well, or putting
Correct.
the research together.
I'm more of a journalist than a researcher. I get labeled as a researcher. I'm not the ones hooking up microbes to the monkey's brain and turning, but I take the data, I interpret it, because let's face it, people who write publishable data are doing so to impress other PhDs, and they're written above the level, even just your typical doctor PhD. They really are, by design. And so I take this stuff, which there's 17,000 medical journals in the world, and I distill it down to where this is the essence of it. This is what you need to know. This is the accurate interpretation without having to read 30 pages. And then I compile it into readable, mentally digestible formats that can be understood. So I'm just compiling the research in a manageable way, so to speak.
And and obviously my take home from the research that you've delivered to me is that if we can, and it's not necessarily just chiropractic as well, it's that if we can manage the way that the nerve system works and how that expresses, that's how we will change people's health. And that, that's the physiological take home there. That's the take home.
And this is funny, where the best data right now comes external to chiropractic. It's like accidentally, like they didn't mean, they weren't trying to prove subluxation, but they did in their research. Heavyweight journals, Journal of Neuroscience, Clinical Medicine, all this kind of stuff. It's absolutely indisputable. And I say this, I come across every now and then what we call the subluxation deniers. I will eat them for lunch, chew them up and spit them out, because I've done it. I have challenged every one of these, let's do an open debate, let's do a public debate, and none of them will, because I would destroy them. And trust me, and the deniers are not the medical doctors. These are disgruntled chiropractors who, for whatever reason, I lecture to MDs all the time, and they love it. I'm using their own tools. I'm not trashing them. They get it. The only thing they always say to me is, hey, let me ask you something. The most common question I get when I do a hospital lecture: how come more of your profession, the chiropractors, aren't focused on subluxation? How come they're so focused on treating conditions and trashing us? And I say, hey, you're right. How come they're not standing on the rooftops shouting this from the top of their lungs? And I usually say, well, doc, you know how the whole insurance game works. Makes it, and they go, yeah, I get it. So, but yeah, it used to be 30 years ago, it was hard to find enough data in the stuff that I was writing to support it. And I started this right when the whole HIV/AIDS research was going on, which prior to that, the immune system had never been studied as a functional unit. It had always been studied from a pathological standpoint. And this stuff was just coming out fast and furious. And I was interested because I had an immune system issue, I guess. So I was fascinated by it. And 99% of what we know about the immune system, we've learned in the last 30 years. And we're learning more about it right now as we speak with research going on. And it validates every single historic principle of chiropractic. One of the reasons BJ was mocked in his day was they said, BJ, the immune system is not connected to the nervous system. And you can find textbooks up to the early 80s that still maintain the immune system was a separate entity. How can the nervous system communicate with a lymphocyte? There's no nerve attached to it. It's free fluid. It's out there. There's no way. Well, they didn't understand receptor cells. They didn't understand how the hormonal system worked. And I tell you what, I love writing about. You see some of the stuff, the relationship between spinal function, hormone, and hypothalamus, and even mental health. And it's incredible. It's there, pure physiology. It's undeniable.
It's amazing, right? It's amazing.
And unfortunately, the stuff is written to be buried. It's written, it's not widely circulated. And I've worked on research projects mostly as a fundraiser over the years from chiropractic. And I always get this research project. It's going to cost X number of dollars. And I go, you need to build into your budget what you're going to do with this research once you have it. Don't just publish it and say, well, we published this great research. You got to have a strategy to circulate it, to send it out. And they go, we'll do that after the fact. I go, no, you won't, because it's never been done. You publish it, you write about it, you get a pat on the back, and then it goes buried in the library. Nobody cares. We should be spending more on the marketing of the research than just the research itself. And people just don't have the stomach for that. I mean, if you do,
Hey, I'm trying.
I'm actually right now putting together and I have for years, I'm self-funding it, and it's going to be, because the best chiropractic studies need to be quality of life studies, not evidence, symptoms before or after. I want to do pregnancy with baby, their APGAR scores on moms who got adjusted regularly during the pregnancy, compared to just the general, and check what the APGARs are.
Yeah,
I just mind blowing.
Yeah. I've worked with quite a few pregnant ladies, and I don't think I've had one pregnant lady that's come through regular care that's had a C-section.
Yeah,
every single one of them's been a natural birth. Every single one.
Yeah.
Every single one. And it's not like it's we're not doing anything special or different for pregnant ladies and what we're doing for anyone else, but we're essentially, we're doing the same thing as we do with everyone else. We're adjusting the spine, we're removing interference, and we're allowing the body to function at its ideal. And by the way, the birthing process is a completely normal physiological function. It's innately intelligent. Like, it was something that happened before hospitals came along, and since they until they close, even after they close, like, pregnancy and birth is still going to happen, whether that's with people, whether that's with other animals. You don't see many animals walking, or a horse walking into the hospital to give birth and have a C-section. It just doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
It doesn't happen. Something really interesting you said about chiropractors, and not enough chiropractors really talking about this out in the world. And actually, it was something really interesting. Actually, I was sat and listened to Dr. Fab Marcini. Was president of Parker, and actually, something he did which was really interesting, which I feel like is potentially one of the reasons why chiropractic loses its philosophy versus the physiology and the anatomy and all the other biochemistry and stuff, because you essentially have a load of lecturers at universities that are not chiropractors. And so they're teaching physiology, and they're teaching biochemistry, and they're teaching anatomy, but they're teaching them as separate subjects and not actually teaching them integrated as a chiropractic approach. And that was essentially and it was really interesting just going through this conversation with you, how obviously you went and spoke to your chiropractor, and he obviously gave you this advice, and then you went off to the other chiropractor and he did this talk, and they were all delivering this information that was all very true, but it wasn't an integrated approach, and it wasn't really talking about how you integrate the physiology and the philosophy, and actually how the two of them interlink. And I think that's what you've just really done incredibly beautifully. And obviously you've lived the experience as well.
Yeah, and I said this earlier, and I'll say it, the chiropractic message transcends chiropractic. 33 principles, we haven't even gotten to chiropractic until number 30, 31, something like that. So it doesn't always have to be a chiropractic. It's I can just about do a lay lecture by reading bits and pieces of Arthur Guyton's books, just about. And that to me is the essence of it. It's already there. It's in the, and every now and then I get a challenge. So not so much in chiropractic events, but like medical. There's no proof. There's no proof. And I say, okay, let's go to your resources. Let's look at posture. Let's look at what your own books are saying. Your most prestigious stuff. And they may not be saying subluxation, but they're describing the exact manifestation. It's almost like I use an analogy. It's almost like saying, there are no written messages or sermons from any of the popes in history. Really? Well, I mean, they're all in Latin. Well, yeah, you got to translate Latin into English and realize there's millions of recordings. But you stop short of saying because I couldn't find the word subluxation. I just quit. You got to interpret and translate a little bit. And I don't always like the verbiage I find in these journals, but they don't. That's the only word they know. And I can work with that because I can go on and further explain. We can look up that word and say, here's the translation sense. And if I can show you enough of them, they're saying the same thing.
This is something that I find
so
Dan Murphy does well.
Doc, I've had, of course, my detractors over the years, and it just gets water off the back. I don't care. And yet, I don't know if I get nasty letters, I get nasty calls. They never do it in person, by the way, because I wouldn't thrash them. But 99.9% of them are chiropractors. I've never had a medical doctor. I've had them call me and ask me about stuff and kind of question, go, oh, okay. I've never had any of them be personally nasty to me. But it's always the chiropractors who, have 8 letters after their name. And I don't know. I don't understand the motivation. They're the ones that hate that I talk subluxation.
It's because it's ego driven, not fact driven.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. Those letters behind their name are ego driven, not always fact driven. Not always fact driven. And look, at the end of the day, if they want to speak their truth, that's their truth. That's their truth.
Yeah.
I'm just going to backtrack a little bit, just because in the UK, subluxation isn't a term that's used a great deal. I use it quite a lot with my patients, but maybe you can just give yourself a brief explanation of what you mean by subluxation.
Well, I use the historical one, but I just simply say is a minor misalignment of the vertebra of the spine, which can cause nerve interference and reduce the communication capability of the body. And there are different components to that, different aspects of it. But basically, it's when that vertebra is no longer in its proper position. It's a slight alteration in that. And sometimes it affects the communication in a negative manner, meaning a diminishment. But I think we sometimes always think of a subluxation as a diminishment, when in fact, just as much it can be an irritation, excitation, causing an overreaction, neither of which are good. And so that's simply now the communication arm of the body no longer is an optimal level. It's not an on or off type thing. It's a diminishment. I'm talking to you, and all of a sudden I'm talking to you, and you can still hear me, but it's not a normal volume, not a normal tone. And then we bring it out to the research showing systemic health, And again, it's the pieces of the puzzle. How do you think that affects you? How does it affect this? How does it affect this? I'll tell you one thing though, probably about 5-6 years in, I was always taught that you have the Merrick chart. And I sit down with the patient and go, okay, so you got a subluxation here. This goes over here. This is what that affects. And this is what that affects. And you know what? I got rid of every one of them 30 years ago. And I said, you know what? This subluxation here, it affects everything. It affects the entire communication path. You may see more prominence here, but you know what? I stopped with using it as a
thing.
Did so much better after that.
I was going to say, because what we basically have come to learn, where we thought, obviously, we know where the specific nerves and different areas come from in the spine and where they go to. But what we basically know is that a subluxation or a change in that area in the spine does not necessarily directly translate to where we see it physiologically, which was kind of the old model or old thought process that if it's here, it's going to go here. If it's here, it's going to go here. And you can't use the spinal model like that, because it is almost a little bit like I can't use the example for you, but like our London Underground. you look at the map for the London Underground, you have all of these different train lines that are going in all these different directions. And then you have these common places where the train lines cross. And then you've all of a sudden got all of these different functions. And the thing is that, okay, yeah, this level here might go down to the stomach. However, there's multiple train stops going through there. And so it might have an effect on the stomach. It might have an effect on the, and like you say, increase or decrease. So you might have that nerve that gets irritated in increased pain. And you might have that nerve root that's irritated in a completely different way, and it's decreased sensation. So you've got numbness or pins and needles. And I really love your ability to break this down into a layman's terms. I really, really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Keith, I'm aware of your time, and I'm aware that obviously we could probably talk about this all day, but I just want to kind of pick your brain and ask you if there was one piece of advice you could give to someone listening to this, for them to take action and do something so that they could actually improve on their life, what would it be?
You're talking a chiropractic patient, or who are we talking to here?
Chiropractic patients.
Number one, make your care a regular thing, whatever that means to you. That's between you and your chiropractor. I always say, and I say this when I'm first having that conversation, when it's time to talk before the person ever shows up. What's your date of birth?
23rd of the 9th, 1991.
Okay, so the 23rd is your birthday on a particular month. So every month you kind of hit 23. It has a little bit of special meaning to it, for the most part. You think about it. How many birthdays you want to have in your life?
As many as I possibly can.
Right? You want them to all be good as possible, right? Okay. So what I want you to do, Patrick, if I'm talking as a layperson, is once you make the move with chiropractic and you dedicate yourself to it, I want you as a minimum to think, you know what, right around the 20, wherever you are, I don't care if you're on vacation, the 23rd of every month, you know what, I need to get my spine checked. And I really push the getting it checked, adjusted if necessary, and celebrate if you don't need that adjustment. Not that I need to go get my adjustment. No, I want you to get your spine checked. Now, you may need more than every 30 days, but that 23rd is a little trigger to you, wherever you are, because it's easy to get out of that habit. Make getting checked a regular habit for you, your kids, and eventually that transfers down to your grandkids. That's the best piece of advice I can give to you.
It's a beautiful piece of advice.
Everything else should fall. If you're with a doc that values that, they should be teaching that. They should be giving you all the other stuff you need as part of that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm pretty certain. I listened to an interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was saying the same thing, that everyone should have like a family trip. Every family should have a chiropractor, like they do have a medical doctor.
Yeah, agree.
Amazing. Look, Keith, I've really appreciated the time that we've spent here today. If people wanted to maybe get in touch or maybe learn a little bit more about you, how could they do that?
Best place to email me, and it's info, I-N-F-O, and it's going to be just my name, first and last name, no dots, no dashes, Keith, K-E-I-T-H, Wassung, W-A-S-S-U-N-G. Was sung. The song that was sung by Wassung is how my grandmother taught me. info@keithwassung.com. You can always find me on Facebook. To my knowledge, there are no other Keith Wassungs in the world. So you Google me, you can find me on Facebook, and I'll respond just as quickly as I could.
Unique in more ways than just one.
I'm not a doctor. I did get an honorary degree about 6 years ago from Sherman, but I'm still just Keith. I'm just a patient. If I can help them in any way, if they were looking for data, we do this all day long. We have information banks, and we'll share it freely.
By the way, he's not lying when he says this. By the way, I happened to stumble upon Keith as a result of so I think someone invited you to like my Facebook page, my clinic Facebook page, and as a result, you immediately sent me some data. Like, that's the first thing you did. Obviously, you saw that I was a chiropractor. You sent me some data, and I was just like, "What is this? This is crazy." And we started a conversation, and he sent me more and more and more and more and more. And that's one thing that I can honestly say about Keith. He's very giving, and he genuinely lives up to what he says he's going to do. I asked him a couple of times if he'd jump on a call with me, and he's done it both times.
Yep, I enjoyed it tremendously.
I've enjoyed it too. I've had such a great time, sitting here and talking with you and just listening. Actually, I feel like it's been more fun to finally use the two more than the one.
Absolutely.
Like you say, people like to talk more than they do listen.
And nothing will engage a person faster than listening. For example, if a way to engage someone, you and I are talking, we're somewhere where at least we're sitting down. It's not, I don't want to walk up to you, especially in current environment where you're pumping gas and go, hey, let me tell you all that, that's weird. But you and I are chatting, we're talking, and I want to engage into a chiropractic conversation. You're a teacher, you're a plumber, you're something like that. And we introduced one another, and I'll say, you might say, what do you do? Well, I work in this and that. And I'll say, hey, can I get your opinion on something? You're a teacher. Could I get your opinion on something? What are you going to say? Yeah. In fact, your IQ, your great. People love to be asked their opinion. Hey, what do you think is the biggest challenge or the biggest thing we could do to improve health or healthcare right now? And I'll get you talking. And again, I take bits and pieces of what you're saying and ask you more and ask you more and ask you more and ask you more. And that's we'll come to that point. We'll come to that point where we turn into the chiropractic aspect or innate aspect. When I have data and literature, I'll go, hey, can I get your take on something? And I'll send it to you. And ask. That's what I tell doctors to do with my materials in their office. Just say, hey, Mrs. Smith, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. You have kids. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Because docs will go, people don't want to read stuff. No, I go, that's because you don't want to read stuff. You read it and just say, hey, I love your thoughts on that. And that's how you engage someone. It appeals to their curiosity. It appeals to their ego. And even when we're having that conversation, I'm asking the questions that appeals to your ego. And you're going to be very thoughtful in your response. And it's coming out of your mouth. That's why when I do lectures, it's a more Socratic thing. I'm not up there just giving a sermon. I'm engaging. What about this? What about this? And it's funny. Fred the farmer has more credibility when the information comes out of his mouth and his peers are hearing it than for me to say it as authoritative.
100%. And actually, was that kind of follows on with what you were saying to me yesterday, how you'd much rather be in an intricate setting with 30 people than be at the front of a stage of 1,000 people.
Yep, any day.
Because you can obviously get into that Socratic mode much easier.
You can. It's why chiropractors should be doing regular healthcare classes. And they don't.
It's something that's massively transformed my practice.
And I'll tell you, the person that gets the most out of that is the person delivering it.
Always, 100%. I have a great time doing health talks. I've had a great time doing podcasts and teaching my community. I think it's probably the best thing I've ever done.
Fantastic.
And we'll influence many more people this way than we potentially will just sitting one-to-one with someone in your office.
I believe so.
100%. And I hate to imagine the sheer volume or numbers of people that you've actually influenced in your life and how big a change that you've made for the world's health.
I appreciate that.
I take my hat off to you, Keith. So thank you so much for jumping on the show with us. I really appreciate your time. I'm gonna let you go. This was another episode of Coffee with the Chiropractor with your host, Patrick Hogg, and we'll speak to you guys again soon.